I'm on the River Don site in Sheffield, Forgemasters. I thought it'd be an interesting video to do. I think somebody had mentioned, could I do more on industry around Sheffield and Rotherham? So I'm on Brightside Lane down here. Look at this beautiful building. The architecture in this. And the building's actually empty. Completely empty. And it does look like it's had a bit of a clean up in the last 20 years. When you see the monstrosities they now build, and then you see this beautiful building, it was actually a steelworks, and this was like the head office for Vickers, Sheffield. It wasn't just Vickers naval yards. I think there was different Vickers because there were different people called Vickers. Probably the same family like, but just look at that building. And if I can do it, you can see a blue plate just there. You can stop the blue plate on the video. But back in the 1980s, I came for an interview through this very door, and I came for a metallurgy job. I didn't get it. To tell you the truth, I'm glad I didn't get it, and I went on into electronics and telecommunications after that. But it's such a shame that a beautiful building like this is empty. The reason I came down, I thought I'd show you what's left of the River Don works, but also there's a new investment coming into the site. The Ministry of Defence bought Forgemasters, and they're pumping in £400 million over the next 10 years. They're replacing a forge press that's been here since the 1950s. It was actually upgraded in the 1980s. And what I understand is something to do, it's a die forge from what I understand. Now I'm a bit confused about the future. Now, I thought originally they were upgrading Forgemasters so that they could produce parts for nuclear power stations for these new nuclear fusion. But I'm not going to be so happy if it's actually going to be defence work, because we've been in so many illegal wars that we should not be in, since Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, Syria, sticking our noses in around the world when we could be improving our own country. We've got a fuel poverty crisis at the moment, and I think nuclear fusion is the way forward. Cleaner, greener, and it should be cheaper energy. There should be no byproducts in this type of nuclear plant. But if you look at these buildings here, all the way from where Meadowhall is now, because Meadowhall was buildings like this, all the way up to the city centre, the streets were just chock-a-block with steel companies like this, and this is like the only type that still exists. And I'm going right up to the junction, but most of it's been carped off now. It's rebuilds. But just here, train or a shunting wagon used to come across here to shunt from either side. But people who weren't around at the time or didn't come from Sheffield just can't imagine this area in the past, how industrial it was. You get an idea. how big these places are. And this is only the bit that's left. You know, they're absolutely massive. Security guards looked like he was getting a bit nervous then, because I know people like Bannerman come out to places like this, and I don't come out for the same reasons. I come out for other reasons. I come out for the actual history of these areas. I don't come out to talk to security guards and see how far I can go with them. Now, if I'm right, I think this was Oak Street, but it's not signpost. Oh yeah, it's signposted as Oak Street. And just here, where you've got this gateway, there used to be a heat treatment plant here. And back in the 1980s, I was working at British Steel Rotherham, and for some reason they sent me down here, and I used to have to come down here either once a week or once a month to actually check the actual temperature gauges on the heat treatment furnaces. I think they were, if I can remember rightly, because I never got told why I was doing it. I think they were train wheels, big steel train wheels, and I think they were heat treating those, and they had to have them at optimum temperature. So there'd be thermocouples in the actual furnaces. And then I used to have to disconnect those, and I used to check the temperature gauges to make sure they went up to the right values. I think the optimum thing was probably about 1,000 degrees, and I used to put the milliamps into there and make sure the actual gauges went up to 1,000 degrees. But it's so sad to see so much of the industry gone, but that's why I left British Steel in the 1985 or end of 84. Because there was no future for us. You can only see a fraction of the works that's left now. Big steel sheds like this all the way up to city centre, and this was a crossroads, and you would around four corners looking like this. You can see now across here is a big new postal sorting place. It must be absolutely awful to work in it. It's extremely busy here, that's why I'm reluctant to get knocked over. I just want to give you an appreciation how fantastic Sheffield was for steel production back in the 1980s till Thatcher decimated it. And what I'm going to say is, I look at it two ways. Yes, we needed to prune the steel industry, we needed to redirect it. There was many opportunities out there, but I'm sorry, but Thatcher trashed it. She didn't prune it. She trashed the industry, and I agreed with privatising it, but the way she privatised it, no, absolutely horrendous. I'm going to just quickly get across here. I just want to show you another big building up here because you can get a better angle on it. You can imagine massive buildings like this all the way into Sheffield and all the way up to Meadowhall. And Meadowhall was Hatfield's steel company, and Hatfields was the private company back then, when this would have been, I think, British Steel back then. And there was massive picketing outside Hatfields. Thousands of people went to try and save the steel industry, and they didn't succeed. So this is where we're at now. This is what's left of our steel industry. And like I said, I think if it had actually been for a nuclear plant, of forging for a nuclear plant, I'd be really positive about a £400 million development for Forgemasters. But if they're just part of the war machine, and we create most of the wars around the world. I wouldn't be too impressed with it, to tell you the truth. But that's just a quick view around Sheffield Forgemasters, the River Don Works.